All right. So here we go again. So as we completed chapter number 11 yesterday from this book by Mark Douglas, the name is The Disciplined Trader. And the last chapter was all about, what I can say, adaptation to the new environment and how it is related to trading and how it is very essential. So it's more like you have to be open for the new information around you, and at the same time, you should not stick to the biases that you have, right? So you have to cross check your facts and you have to get yourself updated. You have to be open to the new information if it is more apt. You have to adapt it. You have to adapt according to the environment rather than sticking to your own, obsolete stuff. And that is the key point over here. I'm not talking about the core values. So core values needs to be there, but if there are certain things that became obsolete after a certain time, you need to change it because you need to grow by learning new things, and if that is the requirement, do it. You have to adapt according to the environment. That was the crux of the last chapter, adaptation to the environment. And today we are going to talk about the very important chapter, very interesting one, that is the dynamics of the goal achievement. Okay, so let's begin. I'll try to complete it like well within one video itself, but it okay. Let's not talk about the hurdles and obstacles in between. Let's go with the flow and let's see how like how much we can cover in this video itself. Whatever the outcome will be, and we'll move accordingly. Right? We'll move ahead accordingly. So the chapter is the dynamics of the goal achievement, and it is the 12th chapter. Again, I'm giving you a brief idea about why this book is very important. If you're a trader, then it is a much needed thing for you because it tells you about how the psychology works and how it is going to help you in the market, which is having n number of opportunities. So when exactly you need to find out the right opportunity, you are not supposed to dive into all the opportunities. You have to find the right one, because at the same time, like in normal jobs, in normal, earning things, if you'll talk about any 9 to 5 job or any government job, there is a fixed income. Okay, you'll do your work and you'll get a fixed income after a certain period of time, be it like 1 month or be it like a daily basis or whatever, right? But over there, you're not losing anything. So there is a fixed amount, you'll get it. You'll do your job and you'll get the fixed amount. There is no possibility of growth over there, but there is a fixed amount. So that is comparatively less risky. But in the market, the primary thing is it has n number of opportunities. You have to find the right one, you have to stick to it, and then sky is the limit. Like you can earn a lot. There is no upper limit. You can go up to any level. There is nothing defined in the market. You can go up to any level. That is a plus point of it. But at the same time, there is a downside of it as well, because if you'll put all your efforts in, but if you'll lose your psychology for a minute or two, the market can take your money as well. So you have to pay the money from your pocket, which is not there in the case of what I can say 9 to 5 job or any traditional kind of job. So that is the key difference between the market, or like in a trading environment or stock market in general, and the job itself, right? So if you are up for it, then you have to work in your psychology, on your psychology. And even if you're not a trader, if you are not on a stock market, then also this book is more talking about the psychology, how the psychology work, how it can help you to understand things better and how you can execute things better, even if you're a corporate employee or whatever kind of job that you're doing. So it will be helpful in that part as well, because it will tell you about how can you grow, how can you learn, right? So it is a win-win situation for both of them. So let's go ahead. The extent to which we fulfill our needs and achieve our goals with any degree of satisfaction is first a function of our being able to recognize our needs and formulate our goals. This is not as simple as it sounds. Our natural sense of curiosity and our attractions are very powerful inner forces that create a state of need or put us in a state of imbalance with the physical environment until the needs are satisfied. When we feel these attraction to certain activities, people, or objects in the environment, it is often difficult to visualize the possibility or formulate any plans because of our other inner forces in the form of beliefs, associations, or memories that act as as barriers. We need to understand the relationship and possible conflicts between what we need to, or feel very attracted to, and these other inner forces. That is a sense. that in a sense say no. The extent to which we fulfill our needs and achieve our goals with any degree of satisfaction is, second, a function of the degree to which we understand the nature of the external environmental forces we have to interact with to fulfill our needs and achieve our goals. The depth of our understanding will correlate directly with the way in which we express ourselves in the environment to create the effect that we want. Third, it is a function of the repertoire of skills that we have developed to interact with the environment. And fourth, a function of our ability to execute those skills. So, if I'll quickly give a summary of it, what is happening over here? The first and foremost thing is like we have to make our goal, and this is not simple as it sounds because there are attraction in the market, right? And secondly, if we'll talk about what is the other thing that we have to do, a function of the degree to which understand the nature of the external environment, we are able to understand what is acting, what is happening in the environment. Then we have to have a skill set to survive in the environment, right? It is a function of the repertoire of skills that we have developed to interact with the environment. We need to have a skill to, interact with the environment. And fourth, a function of our ability to execute those skills. So many people acquire skills, but when it comes to execute that, then also there is, they can feel the difficulty because that is again a very needed thing, right? Any differences between what we want, what we wanted, expected, desired, or needed, and what we got is simply an indication of the degree to which we haven't learned what we needed to know, or evidence that we don't have the appropriate skills to do what needed to be done. Included as a factor in the first category, where we haven't learned what we needed to know in our ability or lack thereof to objectively, without illusion, assess the availability of what we wanted or needed from the environment's perspective. In other words, what we wanted may have not been available to begin with, or available in the quantity we wanted, or in the time frame we wanted or needed, and we didn't have the mental framework to make the kinds of distinctions to indicate the actual availability beforehand. We also have to consider that what we wanted may have actually been available but unperceivable as a result of not having learned to make the appropriate distinctions, which would in turn give us a kind of perspective where we could notice its availability. In those kinds of situation, we usually end up saying to ourselves, I wish, or if I if only I had known that then. When we find out afterward, what we didn't know at the time would have made a difference on how we saw things. Often, however, we never find out that what we wanted and didn't get was only one minor shift in perspective, not knowing, of course, that the reason why we didn't get it was because we just didn't know there was something more we needed to learn. If we had the mental framework to make the appropriate distinction, we can assume that we would have, unless something was blocking our perception. I might add here that when we interact with other people, if we use force and manipulation to get what otherwise would be unavailable. Okay, excuse me for a moment. Okay, sorry. I might add here that when we interact with other people, if we use force and manipulation to get what otherwise would be unavailable, what we are doing is forcing them to behave outside of their beliefs. If their beliefs were consistent with what we wanted from them, then we wouldn't need to use more force or manipulation because a state of harmony would exist. We don't need to use force or manipulation on someone to do something that they already believe in. Whenever we do, it creates a state of imbalance in them that they would normally rectify by some means of revenge that we would just have to deal with at some point in the future. As a general observation of the human condition that goes along with this, most of us spend our lives trying to change what is in front of us to suit the makeup of our inner environment, when all we need to do is change the way we think about what is in front of us, and we will change the quality of our experience of it. Much needed thing. Every time we question the things that is in our surrounding, it like something happened because something was there. I was not able to do this because some factor didn't work out in my favor. For an example, if we lose today, rather than being accountable about that, we'll say market was not moving accordingly. Market is always freaking right. It was you. It was your inner things that needs to change, because you were not with the harmony with the market itself, right? You are going against the market's direction in one way or another, and that's why you got the punishment. You need to accept this if you really want to survive. And that's why like, you know, when it comes to trading, more than 9 out of 10 traders are losing because of the same fact, right? In the second category, where we don't have the appropriate skills to do what needed to be done, we may recognize the most appropriate set of steps to take and also objectively assess the availability of what we want. But that doesn't mean that we have the skills to execute those steps. It is possible to underestimate the skills required in relation to the condition to accomplish what we want. We don't know any better, or we could overestimate our abilities in relation to the condition. Furthermore, even if we have learned the appropriate skills, there may be any number of beliefs or fears that act as a barriers of or limiting forces that will prevent us from properly executing the steps leading to what we wanted to accomplish. These beliefs or fears can be something that we have a conscious awareness of, or they can be completely subconscious. I am defining subconscious as any experience that we don't have immediate access to with our conscious thought process. For example, someone could be afraid of going into the water, be conscious of the fear itself, but not have the slightest recollection of a painful experience associated with water to know why he can't express himself in that way. There is a very important distinction here that you need to make between recollection and memories. What we experience in the environment becomes a memory. Our ability to bring that memory into our conscious thought process is a recollection. Some memories are easy to recall because the pathways to wherever the memory is stored are used a lot. In other words, we remember how to remember certain memories. However, there are many other experiences that become subconscious. There are memories that we have either forgotten how to remember because we don't use the pathways, or we were never really fully aware of what was being perceived by our senses in the first place. However, the point here is that none of what goes in to the mental environment disappears or no longer exists just because we don't remember it. Our ability to recall consciously any particular belief that we are taught as a child, or our ability to recall any particular experience, is not a factor in the dynamics of how any of these mental components act as a force on our behavior. Neither is physical clock time for that matter. Our conscious recollection of experiences may fade with time, but time has no impact on the electrical charge, basically the quality of energy or the amount of emotional force behind the charge. For example, the old adage that time heals all wounds is not applicable to the mental environment. Time will heal wounds to the body because the body is a part of a physical reality where everything is in motion and changing over time. However, time has no impact on the memory stored in our mental environment because the mental environment is not composed of physical matter. It is composed of stored energy that does not change with the passing of time. Emotional wounds, negatively charged mental energy, will never go away unless we learn how to release ourselves from them or change them. People think time heals emotional wounds. Okay, I also used to think it in that manner, but I'm open to, learning new things. People think time heals emotional wounds because after years of experience, they either advertently let go of the pain or build a system of beliefs as a defense to shield themselves from it. In fact, our seemingly infinite capacity to resist acknowledging the injury and hiding the effects of emotional wounds make them very elusive. We almost always know when we have injured our bodies in some way. If you break your leg, you know it because you won't be able to walk. If it doesn't heal properly, you'll know that too because you won't be able to walk the same as before, or it may still hurt to walk. Yet emotional wounds are not always so self-evident because we can always structure our beliefs to make it seem as if we are not responsible for the cycles of dissatisfaction and emotional pain we experience in our lives, thus insulating ourselves from the effects of our own negatively charged energy. This is being pointed out because I have found that most people have a great deal of difficulty believing that something that happened to them in their childhood can still affect how they perceive their environment and how they express themselves now. Although, when you think about it, how could it be any other way? Everything that we experience become a component part of our mental environment. All the parts then act as an inner cause, affecting how we experience the outside environment. Again, we don't have to be able to remember why we learn to be afraid of something to feel the fear. We don't even have to consciously acknowledge to ourselves that the fear exists, because we can always rationalize that it is something else, or use drugs or alcohols to block our awareness of it. However, regardless of how hard we try to stop ourselves from feeling what is inside of us, the feeling are still there. Otherwise, our efforts to block them wouldn't be necessary in the first place. The fear will exist because the energy somewhere in our memory of some previous experiences will cause us to feel it, regardless of whether or not we allow ourselves to have a recollection of the source. Memories, beliefs, and association do not go away with time. Substance abuse or trying to put them somewhere in the subconscious, that makes it more difficult to gain a conscious awareness. There will be continued they will continue to act as a source of energy for the way in which we pick and choose information from the environment and how we express ourselves for as long as we live, unless we learn how to manage them. So the core thing that I am learning over here is you need to be accountable at the first place. You need to check within first, and you have to accept there is a need to change, and then you will learn how to manage them, right? Rather than just procrastinating it, or rather than just ignoring it. Because if you just simply ignore it rather than confronting it, rather than learning a skill to how to manage it, it will still be there, right? It will not, go away with passing time, because it is not a physical quantity, right? It is the energy and which is stored in your conscious or subconscious mind. Did you ever wonder why it was so difficult to break an unwanted habit, or why it can be so difficult to execute some well thought out plan you were really committed to? It is difficult because of what is already inside of us that acts as a resistance to our intent. An intent to do something is not necessarily a belief. In other words, out of everything we intend to do, some of those intention will be supported by our beliefs, memory, and association, and some will not. When there is a support, or efforts will seem effortless because there is no conflict between any beliefs, memories, and associations and what we intend to do. However, if our intents are not in harmony with our beliefs, memories, or associations, doing becomes a struggle where we can't stay focused, become easily distracted, or make what most people would characterize as stupid mistake. Take for example, someone who smokes decides it's a bad habit, and as a result commits himself to quitting. Thus, his intent is to express himself as a non-smoker. However, after he smoked his last cigarette, his beliefs in being a smoker will immediately start drawing his attention to cigarettes until it builds to the point where he craves a cigarette and then has one. What we have here is a classic conflict between an intent that is not only in conflict with other beliefs, but the intent itself has no real structural support. That is, there isn't a corollary belief that says, I am a non smoker. The energy for his behavior not to smoke will have to come from his conscious willingness to be a different person in this area of his life. However, his willingness doesn't instantly negate all the energy in the beliefs he has built up over the years in being a smoker. These beliefs will have a great deal of energy to act on his conscious attention, noticing cigarettes in the environment and thinking about cigarettes, and his behavior to pick one up and smoke it. So similar kind of thing that I have learned in the book The Secret by Rhonda Byrne as well, where she was talking about law of attraction and manifestation and stuff, right? Murphy law and all those things. So she also said whatever way we channelize our energy, we will get it sooner or later, right? So for an example, she was more focused on thinking all positive, right? Same thing, like the example of the smoker they give over here. Similarly, she also mentioned some example. For an example, you want to quit a thing. So rather than focusing on, I have to quit this thing, I have to quit this thing, you can do the opposite way. Like you can give yourself positive affirmation. For an example, you want to quit egg, right? So rather than saying, I'll not eat egg, I'll not eat egg, you'll say what you will eat. Understood what I'm trying to say? So you'll give yourself a positive affirmation, you'll give yourself a positive energy, you'll direct yourself towards a positive direction rather than sticking to the same idea. Because what happens, right, where you put your energy in, it become a reality over a period of time. That was also the crux of the book The Secret, right? So if you're saying that I'll not eat egg, I'll not eat egg, The word not is there, but your energy is still focused on egg, right? So sooner or later you'll end up eating egg again. So then you'll, go again on the same vicious loop of this thing where you will say, okay, I tried, but I failed, and why it happened this way. That was the reason behind it. Similar thing, they are also saying it here, but in other words, right? So we could even have inner support, beliefs, memories, and association for what we intend to do and still have difficulties following through with our plans because of other conflicting beliefs. Sorry. Behavior that would fall into the stupid mistake category is most often the result of subconscious or forgotten beliefs that are in direct conflict with our intents. Trading is a perfect example to illustrate this. Many people devote a great deal of their time, energy, and financial resources to expressing themselves as a trader. They learn a lot about trading. They are even highly regarded by their peers for what they know about the market, but still can't execute their trades properly on the way they planned. There are traders who can constantly make money day after day until they get to a certain threshold level and promptly give all their profits back to the market in one or two trades. The way they give their money back is completely inconsistent with their trading style while they were making money. After they have lost a sufficient amount of money, they go back to the way they normally trade and start the process all over again. This kind of behavior is no accident, it happens for a reason. This is the I can 100% relate to this part because that's exactly what happened to me in January or like in December, even before that in November. So I was, if I'll simply give you the rough data of my last 3 months trading. So if I'll simply talk about this month, out of 70 days, I'm profitable 11 days, but still I am at biggest loss in this month itself. In the first day, in the first month also, out of 11 days, I was profitable more days. 6 days I was profitable, and 3 days I was, what I can say, 4 days I was in loss, and one day was more like a neutral thing. I go for a delivery, so there is a charge associated to that, right? So again, in all 3 months, the common factor is I am profitable more days and I'm earning small, but in those days I'm losing way more than what I acquired, plus I'm giving from my pocket itself. So that made my account go completely blown out, and as of now I'm like, you know taking a small break from trading. Very small break, but yeah, there is this break in trading, and I'm learning things. I'm learning about back testing, and I'm learning, like, I have done it in the past, but I'm doing it more thoroughly this time, and I'm working on my mind psychology as well. So after the, let's see. The problem is there. I understood this is a problem. Let's see what is the solution that I get after at least reading this chapter or maybe this book itself. Right? It happens for a reason. That's what Mark Douglas said. In each of these situations, these traders certainly had developed effective workable strategies to be successful. They definitely have some highly structured belief to support their expression as trader. However, what they haven't done is identify and decharge a whole host of other beliefs, both conscious and subconscious. Okay, I might need to write it down because this is what I'm facing right now, right? Earning more profitable days, still end up earning more profitable days, still end up losing, is because I have not eradicated the other set of beliefs, negative energy. It can be present in like subconscious and conscious both level. Hmm. Okay. So another thing that I want to add over here is basically whenever you are learning something, right? So throughout my graduation, throughout my undergraduation, post graduation, or whatever the kind of knowledge that I have acquired a period of time, in this period of time, this is one thing that I have realized. Rather than mugging up things, or rather than mugging the exact words, read something, try to understand the gist of it, and try to frame it in your own words. And if required, you can put the important terms in it. Right. So similarly, whatever I understood over here, I wrote it down in my own words, whatever I understood, and then you might have seen me, checking something and noting it down. That was the spelling of conscious and subconscious that I was trying to copy, because that was the keywords over here, right? So yeah, that is one of the learning that I wanted to share in between, and it is a tried and tested thing that I have done over the period of time. And at this time I'm of the age 26, so you can trust me on that. It really do work. It worked great for me. Maybe you can give it a try. If it works for perfectly fine for you, maybe you're already doing it. If that is the case, then good to go. You can just skip to this part and you can go ahead with the chapter itself. Right now, let's continue with the chapter that are in direct conflict with the endeavor of trading or making money as a trader. Right. So in each of the situation, these traders certainly had developed effective workable strategy to be successful. Exactly, I do have that. They definitely had some highly structured belief to support their expression as a trader. I do have that. However, what they haven't done is identify and discharge a whole host of other beliefs, both conscious and subconscious, that are in direct conflict with the endeavor of trading or making money as a trader. For example, there are many beliefs related to one's religious upbringings that are in direct conflict with the whole concept of speculating and what is trading, but taking money away from other traders with no services rendered. That key question also came in front of me. This kind of activity isn't consistent with most religious teachings. Another typical example is most people grow up with their powerful beliefs related to the work ethic. They have very rigid definition about what constitute work and how one earns one's money. Trading doesn't rectify or exactly fit into those into most of these definition either. So regardless of how highly developed one's trading strategies become, the act of trading will still violate the integrity of any belief that is in conflict with the act of trading or making money from trading. Eventually the unexpressed energy accumulating in these conflicting beliefs will build to the point where the trader will find himself behaving in a manner completely inconsistent with his trading rules or intent to make money. Often he will even be aware that he is about to make a trading error happen. Been there, done that. So watch himself to do it, and at the same time either feel powerless to stop himself or won't stop himself until he has lost enough money to compensate for the imbalance in his mental environment. I did that. Now, when these kinds of things happen, if we don't understand what is going on, it would cause us to feel inadequate in some ways if we judge ourselves harshly, or we could be overcome, or we could be overcome by a sense of powerlessness and fear because we seemingly have no control over these unidentified internal forces that can exert so much control over our behavior without any awareness of the problem or effective tool for dealing with it. Most people will attempt to build mental barriers to try and block these forces from manifesting in their behavior. Obviously, though it don't work. How exactly this book is like reading my mind, how exactly the word by word exactly it is defining what I did and what I am currently doing, right? What I just recently did, to be very precise, right? I tried manifestation. I've tried, creating a mental barrier, but that didn't work. Obviously, they don't work, which makes the whole situation even scarier. It happened. This is where the substance abuse comes into play. For example, a person who is an alcoholic knows he is a heavy drinker. At the most fundamental level, a person drinks obsessively to separate his intellect from these inner forces he believes he has no control over. The more he blocks, the more he forces built, and the more he has to drink to block. The more he drinks, the more everything deteriorates in his outer environment as a reflection of his inner environment. Eventually, the physical environment, his body, or both deteriorate so badly that he can no longer block the true state of his condition. He then acknowledges that, yes, I am an alcoholic and I need to change, meaning that, yes, I need to address the issue in my life that caused me to start drinking in the first place. The point of all this is learning how to forget our painful memories or ignoring the existence of belief that don't support our intents does not in any way reduce their potential to cause us to behave in certain ways. If we want to change unwanted behavior, we have to change the internal source of that behavior. Okay, I'll write it down. Change your internal source, that is harnessing the negative beliefs. Learn to accept it in first place and change. Learn to accept it and change. And never try to resist it or block it, because it'll, it will make things worst. All right. Hmm. Where were I? If we want to change unwanted behavior, we have to change the internal source of the behavior, releasing ourselves from the limitation of our fears by healing our emotional wounds. Heal emotional wounds. Changing the polarity of belief or discharging it altogether is something that we have to learn how to do by learning how to manage mental energy. If people knew of some way of managing their beliefs, memories, and association, then the kind of painful cycles of forced awareness described earlier would never get started in the first place. Thus far, I have identified three forces in constant operation in our lives. First, we are all the external environmental forces that have the potential to act as a cause, where we where we as individuals experience an effect. Some of these outside environmental forces will have some degree of understanding of, and others we will not. Our degree of understanding and insight, along with the extent to which we can act on what we know, is directly proportional to the degree of satisfaction we will experience as we interact with the environment to fulfill our needs and achieve our goals. Implied within all the external forces, whether we understand them or not, are all the forces of change that automatically alter everything made of our atoms and molecules, consequently making what we do know in terms of usefulness obsolete at some point in time. For example, the chair you are sitting in to read this book is deteriorating over time. At some point, it will no longer be able to support any weight, making your belief in its stability obsolete. Second, are the deep inner forces of curiosity and attraction that compel us to explore, learn about, and interact with the environment in seemingly predetermined ways. For example, there are things that we are naturally interested in learning about or learning how to do in relationship to all the other things that are available to learn about in the environment, but we have no natural interest, like someone who always wanted to be a musician, firefighter, actor, or doctor and pursue these vocations, resulting in feelings of deep satisfaction about their lives. However, if the environment forces us into areas where there is no natural interest, we will experience an emptiness that can be very difficult to identify, only that it feels like something is missing in our lives. What each of us as individuals is naturally curious about and attracted to in the environment come from the deepest levels of our existence. They act as very powerful forces of self expression, compelling us to create in the physical environment the object of our imagination, or to pursue in the physical environment the object of our interest, often in direct conflict with outside environment forces as well as inner mental forces in the form of what we have been taught to believe. Okay, I'll go through it once again because I got zoned out in between or something like that. Okay, so second are the deep inner forces of curiosity and attention that compel us to explore, learn about. Okay, I'll go through this page all over again, it seems. Okay, it's a chair example I understood. At some point, it will no longer be able to support any weight, making making your belief in its stability obsolete. Okay. Second are the deep inner forces of curiosity and attraction that compel us to explore, learn about, and interact with the environment in seemingly predetermined ways. For example, there are things that are naturally interested in learning about or learning how to do in relationship to all the other things that are available to learn about in the environment, but we have no natural interest, like someone who always wanted to be a musician, firefighter, actor, or doctor and pursues these vocations, resulting in feelings of deep satisfaction about their lives. However, if the environment forces us into areas where there is no natural interest, we will experience an emptiness that can be very difficult to identify, only that it feels like something is missing in our lives. What each of us individuals is naturally curious about and attracted to in the environment come from the deepest level of our existence. They act as very powerful forces of self expression, compelling us to create in the physical environment to the object of our imagination, or to pursue in the physical environment the object of our interest, often in direct conflict with outside environment forces as well as inner mental forces in the form of what we have been taught to believe. Third are the mental forces represented by our beliefs. Mhm. They act as very powerful forces of self expression, compelling us to create in the physical environment of the object of our imagination, or to pursue in the physical environment the object of our interest, often in direct conflict with outside environment forces as well as inner mental forces in the form of what we have been taught to believe. Third are the mental forces represented by our beliefs, memories, and association. Even though beliefs, memories, and associations are mental forces, they are not the same as the forces of curiosity and attraction. Beliefs, memories, and associations exist exclusively as a result of the kinds of experiences we have with the physical environment. This is in contrast to the forces of curiosity and attraction that are in us before we are born and would seem to be either predetermined in a spiritual sense of genetically encoded. Some of our beliefs, memories, and association will act as a positive resources for interacting with the physical environment effectively and with some degree of satisfaction. Others, however, will have just the opposite effect. Many of our beliefs, memories, and associations are resources for failure, pain, and dissatisfaction because they lock us into only perceiving what we already know, as well as cutting off cutting us off from our natural sense of curiosity. In other words, they specifically act as forces to prevent any further mental growth. Now, since we have to interact with the physical environment to fulfill our needs and achieve our goals, the key to doing it to assure ourselves of experiencing greater levels of satisfaction is to acquire deeper levels of insights and understanding into the nature of these forces. That is, we need to stay in a constant state of learning. The only thing that really stops us from continuing to learn about the nature of these outside forces in the mental forces in the form of beliefs, memories, and association that build up and as a result block our natural sense of curiosity, sometimes to be point of shutting down the learning process altogether. Keep on learning is one thing. Acceptance and learning is the only way out. That's what I learned. Okay. All right. There is some element of truth to the saying that you can't teach an old dog new tricks, except that it should really read. An old dog won't learn new tricks. It's not that it's impossible for someone, regardless of their age, to learn something new. The issue isn't ability, it's more a matter of resistance and refusal. That refusal comes from the sum total of everything we already believe, in essence, saying, forget it, I already know everything I need to know. Of course, the consequences of such a stance toward the environment can be and often are devastating. And it invariably always takes some truly devastating event or a series of them before someone who has this kind of attitude will acknowledge that the reason for their plight is that they just refuse to allow any changes in their mental environment. Of course, this know-it-all attitude is very easy to recognize in someone else. The trick is learning how to recognize it in ourselves, because it exists in all of us as a natural function of the ways in which beliefs, memory, and association manage information. Again, I can relate to this part, right? This I know everything kind of attitude. You need to drop that on an immediate basis. To stay in constant state of learning, we need to learn how to adapt. To adapt, we need to learn some specific mental techniques on how to consciously apply our thoughts to upgrade, modify, replace, or change the polarity, electrically charge of various components in our mental environment that acts in limiting or inhibiting forces on our perception and behavior, preventing us from gaining greater level of correspondence with the physical environment. By consciously adapting, we are making ourselves available to learn how to fulfill our needs and achieve our goals in increasingly more satisfying ways. Note, implied within fulfilling our needs and achieving our goals is the need to explore the objects of our curiosity and attractions, which also get blocked by our beliefs, associations, and memories. To adapt, we need to choose not to resist some learning and change. Okay, from now onwards, the learning that I have today. Okay, let me just open something like PowerPoint or something where I can just simply type it out, or can I simply copy paste? I can do that, right? Hmm. Why should I do that then in the first place, right? Let me just open PPT. I'll just give the headline key learning and then just simply post it, no? Isn't it? Okay, let's go with the green one for obvious reasons, right? Okay, that's what. Let's add the title key learnings. Okay, first of all, I'll need to make it like that and rather go point wise. Right, it's the first point. Okay, let me just put it higher in the top like that. Can I do it? Yes, I can. Why is not happening? I need to change the font side of it. I'll work fine. Hmm. Oh, okay. Now let's go back and simply copy paste stuff. To adapt, we need to choose not to resist something and change. Okay. This is the first learning that I want to try now. Control C, Control V. What is as simple as that? All right. Let's go to the next point. Okay, this requires a willingness on our part to think outside of the limitations established by our beliefs, associations, and memories, and a willingness to learn how to manage mental energy so we can release ourselves from the negative effects of our painful memories. When we learn how to change the polarity of our painful memories, it isn't painful any longer. We need to change the polarity. Okay, when the memory is discharged or drained of the negatively charged energy, it will no longer have the potential to generate fear. Fear always limits the number of choices we perceive as available from the environment by the way it causes us to force to focus our attention on the object of our fear. The net effect is we end up creating for ourselves exactly what we are trying to avoid. It is important for you to note that when we change the polarity of a memory, it doesn't actually change the structure of the memory. In other words, we don't forget the experience. So we can still use it as a part of our repertoire of what we know about the nature of the physical environment. When we change the quality of energy of a memory from negative to positive, we negate the memory's potential to generate fear, thereby allowing us to perceive all the other choices of experience available from the environment in the same moment. Oh, let me just check. Oh, why did I open it? Okay, let's go back. All right, there are certain things that is going on in my background, right? My niece is crying like hell, so something happened, so my mind got diverted to that as well. And I have observed one more thing. You know what is the most difficult thing to do in this world, especially in this time? Because earlier mothers used to be more motherly, and when I'm saying it, I'm choosing my words very wisely. When I'm sticking to this, I'm taking a stand on it. I stand by my words. Earlier mothers used to be very motherly in nature. Nowadays, nothing against modern mothers, to be very precise, it just the time changes things. So earlier mothers, they didn't have a lot of exposure to so many things, right? As in, I'm talking about from the technological things, right? So most of the women, they were doing the house works, house chores and stuff, and they knew their responsibility is taken, like their priority is to take care of this baby and get the best to the baby itself and provide them with all the things, right things and stuff. So even though they are not liking a particular experience, for example, if a baby is crying or not doing the things according to the way they want, they will just accept it and they will try to manage it in the manner that is best possible for the baby and for themselves itself, for them also, correct. But now, since there are a lot of technological advances which has pros but it comes with the cons as well. So mothers are not motherly as it used to be earlier. The tolerance level, see, they might be equally motherly, I'm not questioning it. The thing is, the tolerance level that used to be there, this is the right essence of the thought that is going on in my mind. So the tolerance or the patience level earlier used to be very high when it comes to you know taking care of the baby and providing him or her with everything that is there. But nowadays tolerance level is very low, very low. And the worst part is that it will go ahead. the things will, like the tolerance level will deteriorate only, as I can see. Maybe it will be completely opposite, but yeah, the modern way of upbringing a child is bit tricky. It was just an observation, okay? Having said that, I'm leaving us what I can say space here where I'm open to having exactly opposite experience in the future and exactly change the way I identified this mental status, or the what I can say, this particular statement that I made. I'm open to change it in the future if I, change I see some different experiences in the future. All right. Now coming back to the chapter itself, we don't forget the experience, so we can still use it in part of our repertoire of what. Just give me 1 second, okay? I just want to know how exactly this word is pronounced as well. Repertoire. Repertoire. Okay, I was reading it at repertoire. Okay, repertoire. Repertoire. Okay, all right. So all the plays or music that an actor or musician knows and can perform. All the things that a person is able to do. All the things that a person is able to do. Basically, a synonym of skill. Repertoire. Okay. So we can still use it as a part of our repertoire of what we know about the nature of the physical environment. When we change the quality of energy of a memory from negative to positive, we negate the memory's potential to generate fear, thereby allowing us to perceive all the other choices of for experiencing or for experience available from the environment in the same moment. Preferably, this willingness to change will come from somewhere other than out of desperation. The idea is to learn how to recognize what we need to know long before the condition deteriorate to the levels of desperation. Okay, I need to write it down. These things are like much needed things in my life now. Okay, I'm not able to copy it. I don't know why. Maybe I'll try it. Hmm. Let's copy it this manner. Control C, Control V, and yeah. Okay, let's go back. Okay, to do this requires that we incorporate into our mental system three fundamental assumptions that will help us to maintain a healthy relationship with the environment and generate the energy behind the willingness that we will need to start such a process, after which experiencing the benefits will act as the driving force behind our willingness. Okay, this is the working part. All right, I'll do it as well. These things are like much needed things for me now, so that's why I'm writing down. Might need another page over here. Okay, let's add another slide. Not supposed to put any title in the text. Yes, that's the need of the hour. Today's video is going to be longer than yesterday's because I'm writing down the important things, or rather, I'll say I'm noting it down. I'm copy pasting stuff, right? But it is much needed thing for me, so that's why I have to do it. Otherwise, there is no point of going through this book if I'm not learning. Learning is the whole part, right? Learning and then applying to it. Okay. Okay. The first assumption is that we haven't learned anything. There is no know, there is to know. And as a result, there are always going to be unknown forces acting upon us until our understanding of everything outside of us evolves to the point where we have simultaneous awareness of everything going on in the environment. The first assumption is that we haven't learned everything there is to know. Okay, very important. So drop your know it all or attitude right away as a basic idea, because it will give us the, what I can say, openness to new information. And as a result, there are always going to be unknown forces acting upon us until our understanding of everything outside of us evolves to the point where we have simultaneous awareness of everything going on in the environment. The implications here are that we need to be in a constant state of learning from the moment we are born to the moment we die, because our intellect has not yet evolved to the point of simultaneous perception of all information that is available in any given moment. Until then, we are forced to pick and choose the information we experience based on what we have learned to believe. The second assumption is that what we have learned to believe, either by force unwillingly thrust upon us as an expression of the outside environment, or by choice as an expression of inner forces that operate within us, like our curiosity and attraction, may not be very useful with the respect of fulfilling ourselves in some satisfying manner. Okay, so whatever you have acquired as a knowledge so far can also be not useful with respect to fulfilling ourselves in some satisfying manner. Again, we are leaving the scope of, learning new things and having more new experiences is what they are trying to say in this part. That is the basic second assumption. The third assumption is that what we have learned that is useful and works into our satisfaction is still subject to change because of the changing environment conditions. Very important. So first thing, okay, so there are basically three assumptions. Okay, let me quickly summarize it for you. The first one is we don't know everything. So there is a lot to learn in the environment. That is the first assumption. The second thing, whatever we have learned is not a sure sort knowledge that is required to satisfy our current means. Third assumption is, even if the things that we have learned given us the experience in the past in our satisfaction, it can change with respect to time. It can change the, like, since the environment is constantly changing, outer environment I'm talking about, since the outer environment is changing, so the knowledge, the things that we have acquired so far can become obsolete after a particular time, can become not so useful after a particular time, right? So in all three of them, our emphasis is basically on the idea that we are open to learn new things, to change the experience, to come in harmony with the current environment, and get the right results for ourselves. That is the whole idea of, all these three assumptions. Again, I'm not talking about core values here, right? The third assumption is that what we have learned that is useful and works to our satisfaction is still subject to change because of the changing environmental conditions. Control C, Control V. Okay, much, much, much needed. If you're interested in getting this PDF that I'm making right now, also, so you can just, you know, post a comment and, like, I'll look into it and I'll send it right away. Okay, I'll put it in description, or maybe I'll even try to connect with you if you're so keen to get that. I'll do it. Right. In other words, what we may need to know to experience more satisfaction and happiness in our lives will often have to replace partially or invalidate completely what we have already learned. Refusing to change what we have learned, we have already learned, is virtually the same as saying that we already know everything there is to know and don't need to learn anything further. Okay, of course, we could easily know if we didn't need to adapt because we would be in a perpetual state of satisfaction. Anything less than feeling of satisfaction from our interaction with the environment is an indication that we need to learn something. Very, very, very important point. So this might be the question in people's mind, right? How, okay, we are open to learn, but when exactly we'll get to know there is no need to learn things and stuff. So basically, if we are at the perpetual state of satisfaction, then there is no need to go ahead. But if you are unsatisfied in any manner, then there is a scope of improvement, then there is a scope of learning new things always. That is the, what I can say, litmus test for this. Okay. The perfection of the moment. If you operate out of the foregoing assumptions, you will begin to recognize how every moment becomes a perfect indication of your state of development and what you need to do to improve yourself. For example, let's look at hypothetical trader whose goal is to make money from his trading. He perceives that what he believes to be an opportunity to do so and puts on a trade. However, he is operating out of fear of being wrong. As a result, his fear will act on his perception of information to block from his awareness and evidence that would indicate that he is wrong. Remember that fear is a natural mechanism to warn us of threatening conditions so that we can avoid them. Now, what is threatening about being wrong? In this case, as in most all cases, it is all the accumulated pain and humiliation inside of him from his past experience. The market or anyone else of that matter presents him with any information that conflicts with what he wants, his fear will cause him to distort to it perpetually, or he will angrily scream at the person who offered such information. Don't tell me that, so that he can avoid feeling the pain already inside of him from his past. In effect, his fears will create for him the very experience that he is trying to avoid because he is avoiding information that would indicate what the markets have to offer in relationship to what he wants to expects. If the market does move against him, he probably won't confront the evidence until the pain of doing so is less than the pain of not confronting it. Important. Meaning that his losses accumulate to the point where it is easier to admit he is wrong than to suffer any more losses. The result of our efforts will be reflected in the environment as a sum total of who we are in any given moment, as it was for our trader is the foregoing example. A goal is an intent that we have projected out into the environment. It is the need to be fulfilled in some future moment. The need arises out of a recognition of some lack. Recognizing the need automatically focuses our attention to scan the environment for ways paths to fulfill that need. The environmental information we perceive, quality and depth of insight, will be a function of the number of distinction we can make minus any information that gets blocked by any fears we are operating out of. Okay, let me go through it once again. Right. It is need to be fulfilled in some future moment. The need arises out of recognition of some lack. Okay. Recognizing the need automatically focuses our attention to this to scan the environment for ways to fulfill that need. The environmental information we perceive, quality and depth of insight will be a function of the number of distinction we can make minus any information that gets blocked by any fears we are operating out of. How we express ourselves to fulfill the need will be function of one, our perception, the steps that we choose as a result of those perception, and the skills we have developed minus any conflicting beliefs. Okay, the skills we have developed minus any conflicting beliefs, memories, and associations, making each moment that we interact with the environment as a perfect indication of what we know and how well we can act on what we know. Important, important stuff. Okay. So basically, in the market, when we are entering, no, we are trying to express ourselves. Obviously, there is a monetary need as well. You're there to earn. The primary goal is to earn, but at the same time, what we are trying to do is, okay, there's this. I'll have to fix it. The background, the light and stuff. It is too bright. Hmm. How can I go against it? It will be like that. Okay, so the content is more important part rather than how am I looking over here. Obviously, I'll work on it, but yeah, you got the basic idea, right? Okay, right. So we are expressing ourselves, and how we express ourselves to fulfill the need. Will be the function of our perception, how we are perceiving the market, like if it is going on in the right manner or not. The step that we choose as a result of those perceptions. Okay, the skills we have developed minus any conflicting beliefs, memories, and associations make each moment that we interact with the environment a perfect indication of what we know and how well we can act on what we know. When we refuse to acknowledge or accept the perfection of each moment in our lives, we deny ourselves access to the information that we need to expand ourselves. Very, very important. When we refuse to acknowledge or accept the perfection of each moment in our lives, we deny ourselves to the information that we need to expand ourselves. How come we deny? Okay, we are refusing to acknowledge or accept the perfection of each moment in our lives. Then we are denying ourselves to the information that we need to expand ourselves. Okay, got it. Any skill that we need to learn to express ourselves more effectively has a true starting point. To find that true starting point requires our acceptance of each outcome as a reflection of the sum total of who we are, so that we can first identify what skill needs to be learned and how we might go about the task of learning it. Without this true starting point, we will operate from a base of illusion. Hmm. Okay, where's the text box now? All right. There's this pointer or no? Yeah, there is this small point. Okay. All right. So the people who are watching it, you can skip to this part because I'm, you know, trying to add another slide and, make the fonts and everything on point. Okay, coming back. Whenever any such conditions come, no, just skip 10-20 seconds ahead and you'll get the content that you're looking for. Hmm. Will operate from a base of illusion. Illusions results from beliefs that we know more than we do and can do more than we can. Tricky part. Illusions results from beliefs that we know more than we do and can do more than we can. We erroneously assume the environment shares our perception of it or of ourselves, and then we actively block any information to the contrary. Illusions are the difference between accepting each moment as a perfect indication of who we are, so that we can identify what we need to learn to move forward, and believing we are already perfect the way we are, in which case we need learn nothing. Certainly, if any of us were in a perfect state of knowledge and abilities, then we could never need to complain about anything or make excuses, rationalizations, or justifications for why things didn't turn out as we planned. Every should have, could have, would have, or if only is an indication of the degree of illusion in which we are indulging ourselves. If we could have, if we would have, meaning that at each moment we are doing the best we can, when taking into account all the components, both conscious and subconscious, that affect what we perceive and do. Acknowledging and accepting this perfection will always give us a true starting point to indicate what we need to learn so that we can perceive the conditions differently, or what resources we need to develop to respond differently. If our hypothetical trader wants to develop into an effective and consistently successful trader, he'll need to engage in some self improvement, much needed stuff, right? Okay. He'll need to understand that the market is always right and that he can profit from that tightness if he doesn't impose a rigid mental structure on its behavior. He need to release himself from the fear of being wrong so that he can observe the market's behavior from an objective perspective. Otherwise, his fears of being wrong will have the effect of making him wrong. He'll also need to establish some definite trading rules to guide his own behavior and learn how to adhere to those rules. If he had been operating out of a definite set of trading rules, he would have never let the lose let the loss accumulate sufficiently that his pain would take him out of the trade. If, however, he refuses to acknowledge and accept his current state of development by blaming the market for his losses, or trying to convince himself that somehow he wasn't responsible for what he ended up with, then he would be indulging himself in in illusion. He would be denying who he is and, in effect, cutting himself off from the information he needs to become who he wants to be. Okay, this whole para is very important to me because I am relating to this part. So, very important. I might write it down. There's it's a green color. Can I change the color? Man, that's not what I wanted to do, but it can be fun, right? Let's do it. That's even better. Okay, right. Okay, going back to the basic. We have to be willing to confront the truth about ourselves so that we can confront the truth outside of ourselves. The less illusion we indulge ourselves in, the more our perception of the outside environment will reflect the actual condition, because we won't be blocking so much available information. By available information, I mean information we are capable of perceiving. The less we block, the more we learn. The more we learn, the easier it is to anticipate the outside environment will react or respond under any given set of condition. Otherwise, we'll not allow ourselves to perceive in the environment what we refuse to know about ourselves. Much needed. So we have to be willing to confront the truth about ourselves so that we can confront the truth outside of ourselves. The less illusion we indulge ourselves in, the more our perception of the outside environment will reflect the actual conditions, because we won't be blocking so much available information. By available information, I mean information we are capable of perceiving. The less we block, the more we learn. The more we learn, the easier it is to anticipate how the outside environment will react respond under any given set of condition. Otherwise, we will not allow ourselves to perceive in the environment what we refuse to know about ourselves. Much needed. Okay. None of us likes to acknowledge what we perceive to be our weaknesses, yet it is exactly what we need to do to grow beyond them. Otherwise, we keep building our lives on this space of illusion that requires so much energy, alcohol, or drugs to maintain that it eventually has to crumble, leading to these very painful force awareness. Confronting the truth in the environment or the truth about ourselves is no more painful than are the forced awareness that results from these illusions. It is just more immediate. However, when we do confront that is inside of us, it is the first step in the process of breaking a cycle of dissatisfaction to turn it into an expensive cycle of success. At the end, if the goal is to become successful, please do it. What better form of goal achievement could there be than to confront condition as they exist, identify what we need to learn to operate more efficiently, and then go about the task of learning it, making our adjustment along the way. Open to adjustment is something that I always felt like this is something that I can't do in terms of emotions and stuff. But now I'm realizing, why should I limit ourselves? That's not my core belief, right? So just all traders give themselves exactly what they deserve. Traders put on trades and then take them off when they choose. The decision making process is the result of the sum total of all the mental components interacting with one another. If we were to inventory all these components, measuring the energy they hold, and then then balance the components that contributes to a positive sense of self valuation against the components that contribute to a negative sense of self valuation, what we would be left is a net amount that we value ourselves. This net amount will correspond directly with how much money we give ourselves out of what is available in any given trade, in any day, month, or year, or by the same token, how much of our money we give away. I know that this can be very difficult concept to accept. However, other than taking into account what we haven't learned yet is terms of insights and skill, how could it be any other way? We make up all our own rules when we trade. No one forces us in or out of the trades or markets unless a position is liquidated by a brokerage firm for a lack of margin. In any given trade, there are a number of possibilities to take profits or cut losses. What we decide to do in each instance with respect to each possibility will be result of our perception and all the internal components affecting those perception. What we actually end up doing will be result of what we decide and our ability to execute our decision, which again will be determined by a number of mental factors, all of which contribute to our sense of self valuation. Trading is an exercise in accumulating money. Once we have learned how to trade, perceive opportunity, and execute our trades, who else or what else could be responsible for what we end up with? In fact, if traders were to chart their equity, it would reflect their internal conflicts and what they think of themselves on a day to day or month to month or year to year basis. These charts would look very much like the typical bar or point and figure charts of the markets themselves, with support and resistance levels, consolidation zones, rallies, sell offs, and retracements. All these patterns would reflect the trader's state of mind, just as the market themselves reflect the collective state of mind of all its participants. Charts like these also can have the same perspective, same predictive value as in the markets. If one learn what to look for, some of the more sophisticated broker firms that manage large funds keep these kinds of charts on the CTAs that they employ to trade their money under management. They will switch the amount of equity available for each CTA to manage based on each individual's chart performance. chart formation. In other words, once you build up some history, it isn't too difficult to determine when someone is about to take a big hit because of the psychological forces building inside of him, just as the collective forces of the market build before a big move. As individual traders, if we want to give ourselves more and more money out of the markets, we have to learn how to value ourselves more and more so that we believe we deserve what we want or deserve what we get. Trading can result in the fast accumulation of windfall profits. To keep those profits, we have to have inner support. Most of the time, that support doesn't exist, and that accounts for all the rags to riches to rags stories that can be told in the trading world. Of course, the first step in the process of valuing ourselves more is to accept our true starting point. That is, we have to take complete responsibility for what we end up with being a reflection of what we need to learn about the markets, about ourselves, or both. Ultimately, everything that we do contributes to our detracts from our sense of self-evaluation. That is why we, if it can fluctuate from day to day or moment to moment. The best way that I know to or add to our senses of valuation is to commit ourselves to the process of growth. Okay, so chapter is 12th is almost it is already over. Let me simply add 2 points and then we'll move forward. Ultimately, everything that we do contributes to our detracts from our sense of self valuation. That is why it can fluctuate from day to day or moment to moment. The best way that I know to or to add to our sense of valuation is to commit ourselves to the process of growth. Commit ourselves to the process of growth. Much needed thing. Let me just highlight it in my and give it a underline. Yup, yes, sir. Okay, all right. So in between, like the half chapter, I thought, okay, let's just make the PPT of it, right? And I did that. Okay, so what I learned today is basically again open self-valuation. I learned about self-valuation, no, self-evaluation. Know where exactly you are bleeding so that you can, do the required things over there. You can, put the bandage over there if required, or you can just cut off the wound completely. So there is a saying, right? If a snake bits you, or like there is a snake bite, then if a particular body part already affected, now it can affect the whole body. So before that particular part affect the whole body, you'll cut off that part, right? If that is needed, do it. So do the self evaluation. Okay, sorry for the pronunciation over here. There is this tongue twister. Even the simple words can be tongue twister for me many a times. So yeah, talking about evaluation now, the thing that I have learned today is evaluate, identify where you are lacking, learn from it, and then grow. Much needed if you want to survive and become a successful trader. That is what is needed. Now tomorrow we'll start with the 13th chapter, again very important one. How can we manage the mental energy? Because so far we have talked about a lot of things about mental energy, right? There are all the memories is stored in our mind in terms of positive and negative energy, and how it is affecting us while we are executing a trade and stuff. So how can we manage that? That's what we will learn today. Okay, so that is it for today. We have completed 12th chapter over here. I have given you the summary as well. If you require the PDF that I made, you can just drop a comment, or you can just yes, you can drop a comment, and then we will go about it. How can I share it? Maybe I'll put it in the chat itself, or whatever is there, if there is a need, obviously. So that's there is a direct demand and supply thing, right? If you need, I can provide it. So yeah, thank you so much for if you have been there till this particular point. Thank you so much for listening out. Any which ways, it was my journey. It was more about me and how I'm learning a particular thing. So yeah, thank you so much. Have a great day. Have a peaceful year and life ahead. Have fun. And yes, thank you, universe. Thank you, Radha.